Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome to a lady that's looking very resplendent in pink, given that when we're recording this, it is Valentine's Day. Kylie Denton, all the way from the fabulous state of Queensland. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Darren. I'm excited to be here. We just had a quick chat before and we had a good laugh, so I'm excited to see what the session brings today.
and hopefully our laughter and our humour continues. But we probably should have said, we should have been recording from when we first got on the Zoom this morning, because there was some absolute gold that you were sharing with me. So I hope I remember to bring that out over the next 50 odd minutes or so.
I'm just trying to think, do I even know what I said?
Well, if you're like me, and I showed you, well, here it is. There's my list of questions, right? So for those of you who happen to see this on the video at some stage in the future, there is a blank sheet that I'm actually providing. So if you are a listener, you know that this is a fireside chat. So we could go absolutely anywhere. So we've been connected a little while on LinkedIn. We've had a conversation before, Kylie, and you've got a really interesting background in financial services. You work with leaders all over the place. You work with sales teams. You've also got a background in psychology, and currently you're the founder and director of Performance Advisory Group.
Yes, I am.
And we're going to talk about some really interesting topics today around, we did talk a little bit about love language, so we might throw that in as well, but frameworks around human connection, but also some psychological insights around generations. And I think it's a topic that is very pertinent for a lot of leaders today, running teams of different generations, different age groups, different genders, but also for people dealing with customers who also have the same sort of mix of experience and inexperience, age, and so forth. So really looking forward. And I don't know where it's going to go, but I know that when I ask you questions, you'll be absolutely putting gold on the table, and that's my job to try and get that out.
Yeah.
What I'd love to do, though, before we start, is just to get a bit of background from you for our listeners' benefit in terms of, what kind of led you down the path of firstly being in financial services and now running a business that's working with lots of different organizations, and as well as, the interest in psychology.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks, Darren, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to be on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really passionate about what we're going to talk about today, and I'm passionate about helping sales professionals to be able to have quality, meaningful conversations with clients, and that kind of takes me back to why I actually started in financial services. I was 13 years old when my father was diagnosed with bowel cancer, and he was smart enough. Now, this was back in the late 70s. He was smart enough to have taken life insurance from an old life agent. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that by no means left us millionaires, but what it did do was it allowed my mum to be able to take some time off work. It allowed us to be able to pay off the mortgage, and it allowed me and my 6 brothers and sisters to be able to stay in the house that my dad built for us. Okay.
6 brothers and sisters.
6 brothers and sisters, right?
7.
So my father passed away when he was 42. My mother then had 6 children at the age of 40 to bring up by herself. Okay. Wow. I just remember thinking at that time, and I was only 13 at the time, I remember thinking if our life would have been very, very different if it wasn't for that life agent that sold my dad life insurance. So my very, very first job was with an insurance company, and most people do not go and actively seek to work for insurance and finance companies. Most people actually fall into that space. But I really made it a mission of mine to be able to help more Australians to have the future that I think everyone deserves, and that is whether that be through retirement, through life insurance, through disability insurance, etc., just like that life agent did. So throughout my career, I've been a product manager, financial advisor, claims manager, done 34 years in the financial services industry, and for the last 11 years, I've been running my own company where we do two really important functions.
Mm.
We help sales professionals to have quality, meaningful conversations. Okay. And 70% of our business is within financial services. So
Yeah.
a lot of that is helping financial planners to connect with their clients, have that human connections, build strong relationships in order to understand their needs. And then the second part of our business is all around leadership development. So I really have made it a mission to be able to help more people to help more clients, essentially, right? That's the whole goal of it. And throughout the process of doing this, I realized that in order to influence and change people's behavior, I actually needed psychology. I needed the psychological understanding of how people behave and their mindset and how they shift. So I ended up studying my psych degree and applying that through organizations.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
And then 11 years ago, I decided to start my own company, and I'm still here, which is really rare for so many businesses, right? You look at the businesses that don't survive their first year, their first 5 years, and I'm just so proud of the business we've created, but I'm also so proud of the team that sits behind me
Yeah.
and makes it happen with me.
That's brilliant. And I wanted to touch on one thing. And at the age of 13, and where do you sit in the I guess the hierarchy of seven?
Second youngest,
Second
right?
youngest. Okay.
Second youngest, but I'm sure everyone thought I was the oldest because every time someone was scared, they were in my bed with me.
Come to you.
Right.
Okay.
So I was always, I think, the one that was that older sibling, but still
Yeah.
the second youngest.
Nice. Nice. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, because you reflected on that story at the age of 13, and your dad had the foresight to have that life insurance policy. Because when most people talk about sales, often they think about car salespeople, insurance salespeople, flogging products that perhaps people don't
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
Thinking back on that, because I'm not going to sort of put it into your to your psychology, but
Yeah.
one of the things I always work on with salespeople is to think that, well, selling is actually the ultimate form of service.
Yeah.
And so, it's almost like sliding doors moments that if your dad hadn't have taken that, then that insurance agent was not being of service because the ramifications were so huge.
Oh my
But at the
gosh.
age of 13, do you look back on that time as a pivotal moment to say, I could now be of service, and that's what led you into the financial industry to now be of service? And I must say, for a business that's now sustainably successful, it cannot be successful if you are not being of service.
Exactly, exactly. You say it so perfectly because I think, especially throughout my career, I've seen so many times where financial planners have not had the quality conversations with clients,
Yeah,
and they have been sold the wrong products or no products. I remember, I started in claims, and that was where people were either sick or injured or had passed away.
yeah,
Okay. And I remember so many times having a conversation with a client when I was doing claims management, and they would say to me, Kylie, what do I do now? If my benefits stop after the 2 year benefit period that the financial advisor sold me, what do I do?
mm,
Right. And the only response that I could say is you now have to get on the sickness pension.
yeah,
Okay. Which is a couple of $100 a week,
yeah,
or a few $100 a week. So because that financial advisor didn't have a quality, meaningful, deep, emotional conversation with that
mm,
client and say, you
yeah,
know what, 2 years isn't enough,
yeah,
or 5 years isn't enough, right? So for me, it was seeing it what I was fortunate with my dad to actually have taken it. He was a really smart businessman, but then to see it on the flip side where so many people don't have it
yeah,
and they're living in poverty
yeah.
because someone didn't have that conversation.
And it must be hard though, as because the first thing that comes to my mind there is perhaps that financial advisor thought, you know what, here's an opportunity for me to get some accrual
Some
revenue for
instant.
2 years, et cetera, without looking forward to what potentially would happen if this
Yeah.
runs out after 2 years. But the other part of this as well, and thinking about this out loud is, um, many insurance policies that you take, such as income protection, total death and total disability, even
Yeah,
life insurance, you're
yeah,
almost taking not so much a gamble, but it's almost future pacing to say, well, in the event of,
yeah, yeah,
I will be looking after my family, but it doesn't necessarily become a priority because I think a lot of people might think that's a little bit too morbid, and the chances of that happening
yeah.
is low. So they look at the cost and say, well, there's no real benefit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think this is where it's important for financial advisors to be able to have some of those deep conversations about what would happen, how would this look,
Mm,
what kind of children's education would you want them to have? What would happen to the house? How would your wife survive, or how
mm,
would your husband survive? But sometimes I think we're so on the superficial level as opposed to, and we do know as well about really getting down to clients' personal values and that trust and intimacy. So what we know, especially in financial services, and Darren, I would imagine you would find this throughout all industries, but what we know is that clients want trust and intimacy from the people they're doing business with. Now, intimacy, what I mean by that is that it is around understanding my values, understanding me as a person, understanding my needs, and understanding what I'm trying to achieve.
yep.
Okay. Don't just try and sell me something, really understand me. And if we can do that in the right way at the right level, then you have clients for life,
Mm,
as opposed to, I'm going to sell you a product now. You might not be able to afford it next year or the year after, and you'll cancel and you'll go again. Okay. And we don't want that.
no,
I know, especially running a business, I want clients that keep on coming back.
100%. And as you were talking there, Kylie, I'm thinking of the term commission breath. There are some that, and I don't necessarily blame the salespeople. I blame the environments that they have to operate in, and perhaps the people that run,
Yeah.
yes, the senior ranks of a business is, we have the best product. This is the best of breed. You've got to sell this. We've got to maintain our profit margin. We've got to maintain our top line revenue. We've got to hit our market expectations versus taking the longer game and really going deep with that connection. Because as you rightly say, if you provide a solution to a problem, and that problem is something that your customer has identified through the conversation with you, and they know that you're there to truly serve them because you've built that intimacy, they're not going to leave. And they're probably not going to necessarily argue over price or haggle over price. They're going to be looking for value. And it's more about the cost of not doing this than the investment of doing that
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
case.
And I think that's where some sales professionals get it wrong, because they're thinking of the end game. How do I make the sale? As opposed to, how do I take this client on a journey
Yeah.
to really understand what's important to them, why it's important to them, and then help educate them on the product or the service or the solution, but then link it back to, remember when you told me this is how it's going to help. This is the value, this is the power, this is the purpose, this is
Yeah.
whatever it might be. We're
Yeah.
so focused on how do we quickly get that sale, as opposed to how do we connect with our client.
Yeah, because my sales manager is absolutely riding me like a bronco to try and get
Yeah,
the
yeah,
number into the end of the month. So
yeah,
with that, given that 70% of your business is in the sales, working with sales professionals in financial services, and 30% of your business, roughly, I think you said, was around leadership development.
yeah.
Working with both of those industries, because I think they go hand in hand, I'd be
They
really
do.
interested in your take on the messaging or the psychology that we need to try and instill in the leaders to ensure that they are prioritizing this intimacy, this trust, this, for want of a better term, the longer game, not just the short-term elixir hit of let's get that policy and let's get that commission trial.
Yeah, there's probably two prongs to that. Okay, and you're right, leadership and sales go hand in hand, right? You're not going to have a great sales team if you've got poor leadership,
Yeah,
right? You just won't, okay? Because the team under them will eventually just not be as engaged or productive or as effective or as efficient as what they do. So there's two things, I think. The first part is, as a leader, how are you developing and coaching and growing and providing the tools and the resources that your sales professionals need?
Mm.
Okay. We often think about, sales training, for example, as a cost
Yeah.
as opposed to an investment. Whereas what I often find is that people on the ground that are having the sales conversations, they actually have never been trained on how to really ask deep questions.
Yeah.
They've never been trained around how to link benefits. They've never been given a framework. They've just been put into this role because maybe that was just the next step for them, or maybe that was just we're going to give them a go. We're going to see
Mm.
whether or not they actually can swim, and
Yeah.
and we don't provide the tools or the resources or the training. So I think one, we need to really be thinking about how are we looking at developing our sales team as an investment in order to achieve our strategy. Because right, if they're not performing, we're not achieving the strategy. That's the reality of that part.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
that part. So my question is are you doing a once a year training for them? If you are, that's not sustainable, and it's not enough.
Yeah.
How are you coaching and mentoring them, and even side by side, the amount of observations that I do, hundreds and hundreds of observations with sales professionals, whether they be in the building industry, the financial services industry, the aged care industry, even in the medical industry. I want to see how
Yeah.
these conversations are happening so I can provide some really great feedback. So there's that part of it. How are you doing that? Is it regular? Is it consistent? And is it actually valuable? Okay,
Mm.
if you're doing it right, it will be. But then the second part of it is, those leaders, how are they being developed? How are they actually being supported? How are they grown? And again, I put it the same thing. So many leaders that come through our leadership program, right, is none of them have had an MBA, right,
Yeah.
because they don't have the time to do the MBA, but they've been put into a leadership role because they're great technicians, great practitioners, great at what they do, but actually no one's ever taught them how to lead. So it's the same. I haven't actually, you're laughing at me, but this is, well, maybe you're laughing with me because it's resonating, but it's the same. Are we teaching them how to lead? Are we teaching them how to coach? Are we teaching them how to provide feedback or manage underperformance or hold people accountable or delegate? Are we giving out those leaders the
Yeah.
skills to be able to do it? So most of the time I'm developing the skills in the sales professionals, but I'm also developing the skills in the leaders as well.
It's a great point you make, and I was laughing because
Not at
it,
me, I hope.
no, I was laughing because what you're saying is so true. And what I will say is it's the organizations who prioritize the development of their people, full stop, starting with leaders, but also their sales teams, operational teams, etc. Because I know that constant development, constant investment in development is eventually going to pay dividends. But it's also one of the first things that they can cut because it doesn't necessarily provide a instantaneous result.
Yeah. Well, I was just looking to see whether I could find it, but I don't have it in front of me. But Gallup, which I'm sure most of your listeners would know, is a worldwide study within organizations to understand, how people, whether people are engaged within
Mm.
their organization. And the recent study that came out, which was the 2024 study, shared that about 70% of people that are being led by leaders do not feel confident that their leaders know how to lead. Right? So there's a concern from the below level that they actually, do their leaders have the skills to lead? But on the flip side of that, I coach and develop leaders at very senior levels, at C-suite levels, right down to senior managers level. And there is this real fear of, am I doing this right, Kylie?
Mm.
Like imposter syndrome. So,
Yep.
because they actually haven't been given the skills or the resources to be able to do it. So, we've got this bottom up going, do my leaders know what to do? And then the leaders going, do I actually know what I'm doing here?
It's a great point, and I often talk about the fact that leaders, and you mentioned it before, they become a great technician, they become a great salesperson, a great financial accountant, and therefore the business sees them as having potential, so will actually
Leader,
promote
yeah.
them, right? So they get promoted to a high level of incompetence in many
Yeah.
cases. And it's the blind leading the blind. So they probably get, this is my belief, this is my story, they probably get to a position where they've now got to maintain and keep up appearances, and they
Yeah,
cannot possibly show that there's a level of vulnerability there that, hey, I actually don't know how to have a decent feedback conversation, because that might be construed as, well, are you in the right place? How did you get there? What did you, or you must know somebody. Who do
yeah,
you know in the senior executive ranks or
yeah,
in the board? So
yeah,
they start to try to keep up appearances, and therefore then less open, generalization I know, to feedback, and less open to the training, because they think I've got to continue to go down this path. In the meantime,
yeah.
internally, they're probably eating themselves up with saying, one of these days I'm going to be found out.
They do, right? They do. So there's probably 2 points that I'd add to that is we often find that leaders like that situation you're talking is they know what to do. I know I've got to provide feedback or underperformance or lead this change better. I know why I've got to do it because it aligns to our strategy. I know when I've got to do it. I've got to do it in the month of February. I know who I've got to do it with, the sales team, distribution team, whatever it might be. But they don't know the how, right? They
Yeah,
do not know the how. And it doesn't matter how many leaders that I coach, I'm often showing them the how. This is how you have an underperformance conversation. Here's a framework. This
yeah,
is how you have a conversation around feedback, around leading change, around accountability, around delegation, around whatever it might be.
yeah,
And it's the same with the sales, right? So we're just assuming that because you're a sales manager or a sales account manager or whatever role you are,
yeah,
that you know how to do sales, don't you? Right. So that's why I love giving people frameworks. I love giving people a framework so that I can go, this is how it should sound.
mm,
These are the 5 steps for it, for example. Now, how do you bring your personality, your authenticity to it? I'm not going to
yeah,
script it. I'm not going to tell you what to say. I might tell you how
yeah,
I might say it to give you a bit of an example,
yeah.
but I'm going to give you a framework so that you feel more confident, so that you feel more capable, and you actually get to understand that client on a deeper level.
It's brilliant because frameworks uh, is what consistency and sustainability is built upon.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. Anything with structure has strength, right? It's the
Absolutely,
same with bridges, isn't it? Right. We
totally.
just look at this bridge on the outside and go, that's strong, but actually it's got, like look at the Opera House, it's got 66 pylons under it to give it that strength to have that
Yes,
structure. So it's the same.
absolutely.
If you want a strong team, you got to give it structure.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this, because I want to draw out the framework,
Yeah.
and I'll be interested in um because there might be some people say, well, if there's 5 pieces to the framework, 5 steps to the framework, can I get quickly through the first 4 so I can get to the fourth one? Can I jump over the second one so I can get to the fourth one? I'm
Yeah.
interested in your take on how it has evolved, and
Yes.
whether it's a smorgasbord or whether it's, if you want sustainable success, you have to follow the bouncing ball. So
Yes.
are you able to take us through and explain the different steps of the framework?
Yeah, absolutely. So, would you like me also? I know that this is videoed as well. So, would you
Yeah,
like me to share the screen? But I will talk through for the people that are actually only listening in as well. Would that be
yeah, that's
helpful?
fine. That's fine. Yeah,
Okay. Well,
because
let
at
me
some
let me.
stage, Kylie, this might actually get up on on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I think, and I'll make sure I explain it really clearly to the people that are listening. Auditory, but for the people that actually might want to go back and watch the video, they can. Or
Perfect.
recording. Is it a video anymore? It's probably not even a video anymore. Do we even call that? Okay, so I'm going to touch on a really high level the 5 steps, and then I'm going to go back into each of those stages and just give you a little bit more detail. But what I also want to touch on, the third part, is where it goes wrong.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
just what you were saying before, do I have to go through this sequentially or actually can I just skip some parts? Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
So the first stage is the introduce stage. Now, this framework again for all your listeners is this is regardless of the industry. So it doesn't matter if I am a building industry. It doesn't matter whether I'm an accountant. It doesn't matter whether I'm in aged care facilities. It doesn't matter if I'm superannuation. It doesn't matter whether I'm selling wine.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a framework that can be applied to all different industries, okay? And people that are listening will start to make sense of this as they go through and think about their own situation as well.
Yeah.
So the introduce stage is all around creating rapport with the client. It's about setting an agenda. It's about asking what's important to get out of our time today. It's about setting the time. So for example, Darren, I might be sitting down with you and I'm a financial advisor, say, and I'm sitting down with you. The first thing I'm going to do is we're going to create some rapport. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to have a bit of a chat. How's your day been? What's your week been like? All that sort of stuff. And then I'm going to say, look, for the time that we've got today, what's going to be really important is that I really understand where you are now and where you want to be in the future. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to set a bit of an agenda. What's going to happen today in this meeting? We know from a psychological factor that people like to know what's going to happen in the meeting or at the time we're having together. Are they going to try and sell me something, or is it just an information gathering? What's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Put them at ease immediately. The next thing is the input, and that is there anything that's really important for you to get out of our time together today? Now, the reason I'm asking that, Darren, is because I don't want you to be thinking it at all throughout our time together. When am I going to get asked this question? Is she going to answer that? Or I really want to know this. So I want to get it off the table. I want to get it straight away out of you to go, right, is there anything that's really important? You might go, I just want to know, are we going to make sure we cover off costs today? And I'm going to go, absolutely. And then the final bit is time. And this is a really important point, and a lot of people forget this. And then in the meeting, they realize that they don't have enough time. So I might say, so Darren, just like what you actually did with me before we got on the podcast, right? So we've got about 55 minutes to do this podcast. Are you still good for that? And I went, absolutely, right? So you set the time with me so that we know. I remember when I wasn't doing this with clients, I'd go, I wouldn't set the time. And then all of a sudden I'd go, oh my God, I've got to go. And I'm like, no, I'm not finished. Finish my conversation yet.
I haven't got to the punchline.
I'm finished. We're not where we need to be. So that introduce stage is really about creating a connection, setting up front what we're going to talk about today, asking for input and setting time. It's really, really important. I often find in this stage, people try to rush it. They're just so busting to get into the next stage that they actually don't create that connection. And that next stage is all around discovery. Okay. And what this stage is all about is really understanding the client's goals, needs, objectives. It's about asking the right questions, about playing in this space of really, truly understanding your client. Okay. And this is where this trust and intimacy is built when we're in this space. Now, if I haven't done the introduce stage right, then what will happen is that it'll be like I'm pulling teeth. Have you ever, for the listeners out there, have you ever felt like it's this, I'm asking all the questions and I feel like I'm just getting one responses back. This is often because people have not created enough rapport. They haven't connected with the client, right? I know when I've connected with the client because we just open up into this beautiful dialogue of just them telling me about them and, their family and who they are and what's important to it, why it's important to it, because I've created that space. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that discovery stage is really important. And what I often find is people, again, try to rush this because they're like, I know what we can help them with. Quick, quick, quick. I've got to tell them. Okay. So they're busting to get to the, let me tell you how good I am, or let me tell you about our product, or let me tell you about our solution, or let me tell you about, the service that we offer. Okay. As opposed to being in this space of letting the client talk and share and just really tell us, right? Tell us what's important to them. So that discovery space is the longest time in an appointment. If you do this right, then you will be able to educate the client on your services, solutions, or topics, or products, or whatever it is that you have. Do that bit too short, and you will literally be like trying to sell them something that hasn't yet quite hit the mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or in situations, Darren, I've actually seen people educate them on multiple products or services just because they haven't done it right and they're just doing this scattergun approach because they're like, I hope something lands. I hope you go, yep, I want that one.
And a confused mind never buys.
A confused mind never buys. That's right. So that discovery stage, stay in that place, play in
Mm.
that space, really get to it until you go, right, I know absolutely enough about this client to really, really get how my product, service, or solution will help them.
So, if I can ask a question, this one, Kylie, you've got discovery where we're understanding the needs, objectives, trying to understand what the challenge is, the pain, the questioning techniques, but also listening.
Yeah,
Is this also where we want to really double in and presupposing, of course, we've done the first process really well, we've built rapport, we've got a connection, asking the hard questions, asking sometimes the challenging questions that if this situation were to occur or that situation was not to occur, what would be the consequence? And how
totally,
important is that to you? So to dial up the pain.
totally,
Yeah.
totally, totally. So I call them emotional questions, questions that evoke feelings in your clients because of the products or the services that your solution will help them with,
Mm.
right? And, I often find that people don't like to get emotional, right? Whereas I love that space because my background's psychology. So I love that space. I'm curious. I want to
Yeah.
know, like, if this was to happen, what would happen? Or what would you like to happen? Or how would that play out? Or what impact would that make? Or how important is this to you? They're all beautiful emotional questions, right? That
Yeah.
we can ask our client. And when you go to that level, the client actually feels more trust and intimacy with you, right? That real intimacy around you understand me, you
Mm.
understand my values, you understand my needs, you understand me as a person. I want to do business with people that understand me. I
Yeah.
don't want to do business
Absolutely.
with people that want to sell me a product.
That's
So,
right.
isn't it? So I want people to go, yeah, she gets me. There's something about Kylie
Mm.
that really, really aligns with who I am as a person, right? That's the gold in the discovery. So if you rush that bit and ask these high level, the kind of high level questions, how much do you earn and what do you want to do, and those, what do you like and what don't you like, and that sort of stuff. It's just really, I'm ticking a box.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get down to that. So that
Yeah.
discovery. So if you do discovery well, educate becomes really easy. There's no doubt in my mind with everything that you told me that this is the best product or service or solution for you,
Yeah.
right? So that is where I'm actually discussing the products and solutions. I'm educating them based on that. So I'm saying,
Mm.
based on what you told me, Darren, and what was important to you and why it was important to you, this is where I see you having this. This is where you fit, right?
Mm.
And that educate stage, I like to often say, especially to financial planners, this is not about you getting on your podium and showing how good you are. This is not
No.
about you. They already understand you're qualified, experienced, and should have the knowledge to be able to execute on what it is they've come to see you for.
Yeah.
So educate isn't about, let me make it sound how good I am. Educate is about explaining to them how your product, service, or solution will help them based on what you found out in the discovery stage.
That's it. That's it.
Okay. Not about getting you on your podium about how good you are. And in fact, I'm often saying to people, just they don't care. What they care is that they know you care. Okay. So the educate stage, short and sharp. Okay. The benefit stage, now this is the part where I often see sales professionals not even talk about this. So
Yes.
they assume that because I've asked the right questions and I've educated, you just get the benefit.
That's right.
You
You
just get
just
it. You
hand over
just
the check.
you just get that, right? Whereas clients actually need to hear it out loud. So they
Yeah.
need to, so for example, it might be, based on everything that you've told me throughout the time that we've had together, you've told me that it's really important to make sure that in the event that something happens to you, that your mortgage is protected, that it's covered. In the event that something happened to you, your wife and your family do not need to worry about having a roof over their head.
Mm-hmm.
In the event that, you want to make sure that you retire at the age of 65 with, I don't know, $70,000 per year, because you actually have worked so hard all your life. You actually want to have at least one overseas trip a year, and you want to actually spend some time with your grandchildren,
Yeah.
right? The benefit of us actually putting in this strategy now means that we're going to be closer to achieving that goal of you spending time with your family, having some time with your grandchildren, and knowing that if something was to happen, you don't have to worry about your mortgage. And that's the benefit of what we do here at blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether I remember being sold. I like a glass of wine, right? Do you? I like
I
a glass of
do.
wine.
I
But,
do.
I can't drink wine because my body just doesn't really love it. Okay. So it has to
Okay.
be organic. It has to be preservative free. And I remember being used this framework with a wine company. And he said, you know what, Kylie, the benefit of you buying this wine means that if you don't like it or if your allergies come back, you can send it back to us free of charge, right?
Wow.
That is the benefit to you based on what you told me and your allergies and all of that sort of stuff. Send it back to us. We will not charge you a dime and you don't have to worry. Sold
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. It
Okay.
was a no-brainer.
It was a no-brainer. He linked the benefit based on what I told him in the discovery.
Yeah,
He
nice.
heard the discovery. He sold me wine that was preservative free, red, no, and organic. And the benefit was if I didn't like it,
Mm.
send it back, right? So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what industry you're in, you must link the benefit back to what you found out in the
Yeah.
discovery.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'll just say it again. If we don't introduce and spend time in the rapport, it's like pulling teeth in the discovery. If we
Yeah.
don't spend enough time in the discovery, then we actually educate on topics or services or solutions that are not really relevant to the client or haven't hit the mark because we
Mm.
haven't really understood them. The benefit part is really making sure that you are linking what they told you in the discovery in order to be able to really resonate with that particular client sitting in front of you. And then the final part is closing, right? And
Yeah.
again, you kind of think this stage, it's really interesting that you think that they should just know how to close, right? Right. But some people actually have, a lot of people, I should say, actually have this real anxiety. They start to sweat, their heart starts to race a little bit, and they actually go, oh my God, now I've got to ask for the business.
That's it.
I've got to ask for the business. What do I do? Right. So this commit stage is really, if you've done all the other stages well, then the commit stage is okay, well, based on everything we've talked about today and based on everything that you've shared with me,
Mm.
this is the solution. This is how it's going to help you.
Mm.
So when do you want to get started? Right. That's that assumptive close, etc. I also find in this stage, and I put objections at the end, right? And most people put objections closer to the front, but
Yeah.
I find if you do the stages at the front really well, you'll have very few objections at the end because you've actually really, really uncovered the client's needs.
I think you're right. And as you were talking through this, I'm thinking of all the examples that I've been through trying to sell and we didn't get the result. And if you analyze the process we went through in this particular framework setup, we didn't do the introduction very well,
Yep.
and we spent too short a time period on the discovery,
Yeah.
and we thought we got what was the root cause or the key problem, and so we went down that rabbit hole only
Yeah.
to find that it wasn't the real one, so it was almost impossible to close, and we got objection after objection
Yes.
after objection. So I learnt to slow down to really get um, honed in on what is the actual challenge and go deeper when they provided a challenge or when they provided an objective. You know, you want to make more money. Well, why is that? What is it going to do for you? What are you going to do with that? And so ask questions, go deep, deep, deep to try and validate or qualify, is what they're telling me the truth, or are they on a fishing expedition? Because if they're on a
Yeah.
fishing expedition, I may as well stop educating them and stop the process because they're not serious, right? I only want to deal
Yes.
with people who are serious, which means when I get to the end, then the natural evolution will be we will do some form of business.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. So what you're doing there, Darren, and is using a concept called the rule of three, right? So the rule of three is where You ask a question, the client responds, and you ask another question based on that client's response. The
Mm,
client responds again, and then you ask another question based on their response. So it has to be based on their response.
yeah.
And you're actually digging deeper to really understand that real true
Mm,
emotional driver, or as you say, whether or not they're on that fishing expedition or not, right? And that emotional, that rule of three is actually, I want to really understand, is this important to you? If it is, I can help you. If it's
mm.
not, then I'm okay with that. Let's shorten the process up as well.
And in the introduction phase, is this something that you do, and is it something you encourage your clients to do in terms of when you're setting the agenda, you're almost setting expectations around what the purpose of this conversation is going to be. You put a boundary across it and say, look, at the end of this conversation, if I feel there's a fit, then I'm going to show you a way that we potentially can work together, right? Whether we end up working together or not, that's up to you. But I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't at least show you. Is that okay? Right. So as long as you built that rapport and you get that, you've
Yes.
almost got permission to go to the next stage.
I agree. I agree. And I use it even with my prospects as well,
Yeah.
right? The same as, I want to know that one, that introduce stage, actually, do I like them? Do I want to do business with this person? Right? Because when you own your own business, you
Yeah.
want to actually have clients you want, really,
That's
don't
right.
you?
Can I have an
So
organic preservative-free wine with this person?
yes, that's it. You know what I mean? So I actually want to know, like, do we have something? Do we have
Yeah.
something? And then the second part, and again, before I got onto a call with you for the podcast this morning,
Mm,
I was speaking to one of my clients, and we've got a new leadership program that starts next Thursday. And we were talking about a couple of his leaders that he wanted to go on the program. And he shared with me one leader that I actually didn't feel should come on our program. Okay. I don't
yeah,
think we should have been rewarding this leader with a
sure.
program when I actually didn't think that leader deserved the program. I thought there
Yeah.
was a different conversation that needed to happen. So for me, I would not have found that. It took me about 35 minutes to find out, be through asking questions, going through the
Mhm.
discovery stage. And I said, you know what? I actually am happy to take three of them on, but I'm not happy to take that fourth one on. Educating them. The
Mm,
benefit is the three are going to get some great value. The fourth one is not where we need them to be. Right. So it's the same, right?
mm.
I don't want to sell a program or a product or a service to someone
No.
if actually they're not going to get the best value from it.
And may I say that approach, what you're saying is I'm detaching myself from an outcome, right?
Yes.
Because from a financial point of view, it's probably benefiting me to have that fourth person there.
Yeah.
You know what? It's not that I would not like the dollars, but I'm not going to have my reputation potentially tarnished, nor the experience of the other three perhaps
Yeah.
negatively impacted by somebody who might have their own agenda, for example, right? And I don't know the details, but
Totally.
but
Totally.
what do you think that does to a customer, prospective customer, when you say, you know what, I don't think that this is the right fit? It almost creates this pull factor that says, hang on, what do you mean? Because
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
sales organizations, they want to push something onto me. You're doing something completely different. Is this
Yeah.
some sort of psychological
Yeah.
mumbo jumble mind trick? Come on, what are you
Well,
doing, Kylie?
well, do you know what I actually felt like it did? Reflecting as I hear you say that, is I actually felt like it actually created a stronger bond between me and the CEO. Okay.
Totally.
Right, because that CEO could have just gone, well, Kylie actually isn't just pushing the program onto my people and let's get everyone on. She's actually making sure that they're a right fit. So therefore, so hopefully, I hope that he would think that I've got more integrity. Maybe it's the integrity that I think that's showing up there.
And I think when you're in that space, you become a very attractive force. And
Yeah,
the message that it sends, almost unconsciously, is this person is interested in the welfare of my business, the sustainability of my business. She's in this for the long haul, right? And it
yeah,
might actually give something to think about for the CEO, for example,
yeah,
whether the people that they currently have in their business are in fact the right fit for the roles that they currently do.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it might actually
exactly.
prompt them to do a review and say, do we have the right people in the right roles with the right competencies? And if so, great. If not, what are some changes we could make that wouldn't have come to the surface unless Kylie had have actually done what she's just done, which is a service where you can't put a dollar on.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I did. I said, I don't think this is a development conversation. I think this is a behavioral conversation. So
Yeah,
I think you need to have a conversation around expectations around behaviors.
yeah,
I don't think we should be looking to develop them until we see some changes in their behavior.
yeah. So
Okay.
they
Then
have
when
to
we see
qualify.
that, they have to qualify, right? And it's the same, even with people that I've coached over the years, there's been leaders that have wanted me to coach some of their staff, and I've just gone,
Mm,
I'm sorry,
mm.
that's not a coaching
Yeah.
conversation. That's not a coaching client. That's actually a leader problem. So
Yes.
you need to lead them differently, and then when they're performing, when they're ready, is when I will come and appear, right?
Love it.
Because
Love it.
they're trying to pass that off. I'll just fix that person, Kylie. Can you just coach them? Actually, let's coach you to coach them,
Yes.
right?
Totally. Totally. So I love that framework. And what you've just shared there is a great, you must have known this. There was going to be a very interesting transition, just like that beautiful piece of art behind you there, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Into, well, let's look at some psychology around this because a lot of businesses now have teams, leadership teams, management teams at different levels of development, different ages, different backgrounds, etc., etc. So, can you just share some insights in terms of how do we best deal with people from different generations? Because there's a lot of businesses now that have got a mix of people who've been there for 5 minutes, 5 months, 5 years, and 25 years, all in the same team, and the leader has to somehow get them all operating in cohesion in a nice symphony orchestra to deliver the outcomes.
yeah, yeah. Do you know what? The first time in history we are leading 4 generations.
Wow.
Okay. So that is our baby boomers, that's our Generation X, our millennials, as well as our Generation Z. So the first time in history we are leading 4 generations. Leadership, I feel, has gotten so much more complex than what it was potentially, Darren, when you and I started in the industry, where it was very much a command and control.
Yes.
Okay, this is what you do. You don't question it. You do it, and then that's it. And
Mm.
I certainly grew up with some leaders leading me that way. Leadership has evolved where it's very much more empathetic. COVID brought that out in us 5, 6 years ago now, but much more collaborative. And I
Mm.
think, one of the things that I'm often saying to businesses is that when we're leading a multi-generational workforce, we actually have some really strong biases,
Mm.
okay, that are just internal. I'll read a couple that I just presented yesterday. And again, for your listeners, see whether or not you have some of these biases. Is that millennials are slackers? They want this work-life balance, spending their time on the beach on their computer, right? That Generation X's demand this work-life balance, or baby boomers are technologically challenged,
Yes.
or Gen Zers are job hoppers, or older employees resist change. Okay.
Yes.
So we have these internal biases or unconscious biases that are across generations. Whereas what I think we need to do as leaders or organizations is we need to understand, how do we bring in the generations to work better together? Because they're not going anywhere, are they?
No, that's right.
Right. We're here. We've still got years and years for the baby
Mm.
boomers to keep working, right? We've still got years for them, and then we've still got the Generation X's, which is my generation. So I'm often saying is, how do we as an organisation really create that education and awareness of some of our biases? Because
Yeah.
you hop on a Zoom meeting, right? And if someone's muted themselves and they're, I don't know, 50 odd years, we're like, oh, laughing at them, going, oh my God, so technologically challenged. Whereas we wouldn't do that to someone that's maybe 20. They'd be just,
No,
oh, just take yourself off mute, right? So
that's
we've
it.
got these unconscious bias. So I think we've got to have this education and awareness of some of the biases that we might have. But I think what we need to do is we need to collaborate more within those generations. So how can you how can you have like mentorship programs, or how can you have some of your baby boomers with your Gen Zs, or your millennials with your Gen Xs, right? And really try and get them working together, as
Mm.
opposed to we're so different they don't understand me because they communicate digitally and I communicate face to face. And then we've got the Generation X's who, do a bit of both and don't really understand where we sit. So it really is how do we start to have that education and awareness, but how do we offer these opportunities to buddy up or mentor, or just work collaborative with the others and learn more about them, understand your own biases.
It's a phenomenal insight. And you mentioned the word collaboration. And when you were talking, I'm thinking, well, curiosity is part of that.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, well, we've just gone through a framework of human connection, and in order to collaborate, you actually use this human connection framework when
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
two people from different generations, because you've got to find a way that there's rapport. So how do we find common ground? How do we
Yes.
start to discover through being curious and
Yeah.
understanding, what does motivate you? How do you like to receive information? What are some of the things that maybe distract you, or what are some things that I need to be aware of that will actually get you to
Totally.
prioritize what's coming from me, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So
Yeah.
it's the seeking to understand, and then you can start to educate, then you can
Yeah.
start to talk about the benefits, and then you can start to commit, right? So it's the
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
closing of the sale, but it's more of a close of, well, this is the way that I now understand how you operate, how you communicate, some of the things that I now know about you. So I can now adapt my style to suit you so that we're connecting on the same level. And so you can now start to work in a multi-generational ecosystem, in,
Yes.
dare I say it, in harmony. Now, it sounds
Yeah.
very, very, very woo-woo-ish, but that's true.
It is true. And we need to understand that the younger generations that are coming through, that will make up the majority of our workforce in the next 5 years,
Mm,
that they actually want to collaborate more. They
yeah.
want a company that allows them that ability to have that collective intelligence of the group. So often, when I think about collaboration, if we think about the strategy of an organization, you can look at the strategy and you can go, right, these are all our strategic priorities. But then under that, what happens is leaders of teams or leaders of divisions work very much in silo,
Mm,
whereas and just go hard to try and achieve their goals,
yeah.
as opposed to looking up and going, who else actually can help me achieve it? And how do I collaborate? And when do we collaborate? And what do we collaborate with? And how should we do it? And who should I do it with? In order to then go out to that person and go, you know what? I'm looking at what your strategy is, what my strategy is, and I actually think there's this real beautiful overlap. And how
Mm.
can we work better together? Because together we're stronger. So how do we work better together in order to achieve, as an organization or as a team or as a division, to get the results that we need to achieve as a company?
Yeah, it's a great point. It's almost like a multiplier effect, because if they just continue to focus on their individual silos, they might be successful, quote unquote, in relation to achieving their objectives, but they won't necessarily unleash the full potential of the organization.
Yeah.
That requires multiple different stakeholders. So it's all the human connection. It is just the
Yeah,
human
it
connection.
is. It's about, and again, I was talking about this yesterday. It's about building and maintaining relationships. How are you building strong relationships with your peers, your stakeholders, your business partners, your clients,
Mm,
those people, and then how are you maintaining it? Because a lot of people say to me, Kylie, I'm busy, I don't have time to catch up with them. And I'm like, well, actually, what's the impact of not doing that?
yeah.
And they go, well, when I need something, it might not be delivered on time, or I might not actually get the result that I want, right? So is it worth it or is it not worth it,
Mm,
right? So,
yeah.
building and maintaining relationships, and again, the higher you go in leadership, that becomes a pillar of your success.
Oh,
If you
absolutely.
cannot influence and build and maintain relationships, you absolutely cannot get the results that you want at a really, really strong level.
Correct. Correct. Um, it might sound like a bit of a cliche, and it probably is, but I often, when I'm doing leadership programs, I'll say to leaders that, irrespective of the level that they're at, that the greatest gift they can give their team, or the greatest gift they can give others, is the gift of their attention, which
Yeah.
says focus on being present with people and prioritize people over things,
Yeah, yeah,
And you do that because it's the right thing to do, because you're constantly investing in other humans that
yeah, yeah.
eventually you'll be able to reap the harvest. But you don't do it in order to reap. You do it because you want to build strength in the organization.
Yeah, I love that. I go into a lot of organizations where they go, Kylie, we're not getting the results that we need and we don't really understand what's happening. And I read these amazing strategies. Like I look at the strategic priorities, I look at the goals, I look at their mission, their vision, their purpose, all of that, their initiatives, and I go, wow, this is amazing.
Mm,
How are you going with that? And
yes.
they go, not very good. Okay. Not going good because the people are not on board, right? So we've got to remember that it's the people that achieve the strategy. It's not the strategy that drives the people.
Correct.
So I'm always looking at what do we need to do for the people in order to develop them, support them, grow them, provide them with the tools or the resources or the mentorship or the coaching or whatever they need in order to achieve it. Because there's no use having a brilliant strategy if we're actually not supporting or investing in the people to do that.
Which kind of brings forth the truth that I believe that culture ultimately beats strategy.
Totally, totally. Yeah.
Um, I've just looked at the time and it's been an hour nearly. So uh, I might have to get you back on because I do want to talk to you about, and I think we can go deep into this being love languages for in business and corporate and leadership. So I think we'll have to organize another catch up. Um, Looking at 2025, and we're now halfway through second month of the first quarter of 2025. Um, Not so much in terms of trends that you're seeing, but what's something that you're really, I guess, focused on for this year, based on the work you've started to do and the things you're seeing in businesses that could be a piece of advice, almost like some guidance for leaders who are listening to this to maybe sharpen their focus and maybe just start thinking a little bit differently than perhaps, or keeping everything on a strategy and focusing a little bit more on people.
I think for me, one of the things I'd like to see more leaders do is to have a really clear development plan for their people, right? We know that the younger generations want leaders to add value. They want to develop. They want to actually be higher than what they were. Like they actually want that, as we were talking about, they want that senior leader's role before they've
Yeah.
even earned it. So I feel like that if leaders can make sure they are developing their people and they have a path, and that's not to say they have to go out there and spend a heap of money. It could be mentoring them up, buddying them up, helping them to learn new tasks or new skills or new competencies,
Mm,
but just having a plan for your people so that
yeah.
your people feel valued, your people feel appreciated, and your people feel like you care for them.
Mm, which is really important. And that's the
Yeah.
key thing, right? That's care. It's genuine care.
Care, yeah.
Because you can't buy loyalty, but you can create an environment where people become loyal to you because they want to choose to follow you, not
Yeah.
follow you because the organizational structure says they have to.
Exactly, exactly. That's what we want. We want our people to want to work for us. We want
Yeah,
our people to want to be with us.
yeah.
Gallup also said that 49% of people within organizations were currently looking for another role. 49%. So that was 2023 results. So I'd
Wow.
hate to think about what it looks like now, but that's huge turnover. That's
Oh,
huge
massive.
distraction, disengagement, quiet quitting. I want my team to actually want to come to work for me every single day.
Totally. Totally. That is frightening. So if you're a leader listening to this, understand that, based on that statistic, there's 49% of your
49%.
people that are actively on LinkedIn or seeking other things to do. So
Exactly, exactly.
awesome. Hey, Kylie, really appreciate you jumping on the podcast.
My
For people
pleasure.
who would like to learn more about you and the great work you're doing, where's the best place for them to connect and to learn more?
Sure. So I'm active on LinkedIn, so they can reach out to me, Kylie Denton, Denton, on LinkedIn, or they can reach out through our website as well, which is performanceadvisorygroup.com.au,
Brilliant.
and reach out to us that way. Love to have a
Love it.
chat.
Love it. Thank you. I will. I'll put those in the show notes. And this has been a great conversation. We're going to have to
Yeah,
do this
thanks.
again because I want to talk more about love languages with you. So
Perfect.
for this round, thank you so much for being such a great guest on the Exceptional Sales Letter podcast. Really love the
My pleasure.
conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Darren.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Letter podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.